I believe that these gentlemen are telling the truth. They are now stating that it was their understanding they had the support of Washington, D.C. in their efforts to oust Nicolas Maduro. This is something that Nicolas Maduro himself has said was the case. In today's video, I have more evidence that we here at the channel uncovered 2.5 years ago that ties the details of this event to planning that happened nearly 10 years ago. Specific details that cannot possibly be just a coincidence. And that's what I'd like to show you today. This video is probably going to be a little bit longer than we normally do regarding Venezuela, but there are some details you're probably going to have to write down to make it all make sense in your mind. It has to do with the amount of people that were supposed to be involved in this, and this little-known naval vessel that was secretly developed in southern Florida and California to some extent, that supposedly never got used. But there are some very strange coincidences around it that tie its capabilities to this event. So without any further delay, let's make our first stop here at AP, talking about this recent event so that we have our facts straight. This Justin Goudreau, former Green Beret, Bronze Star winner, said that he had spoken with people at quote-unquote the highest levels of our government about this incursion into Venezuela. The plan was to pick up Nicolas Maduro, extract him from his security team, and then get him to an airport, and then fly him out of the country. That's an important detail, because they were going to use fast boats to go into the country. And because, of course, quote-unquote, everybody was going to be on their side, they wouldn't have to worry about extracting under fire. Because all they had to do was get the guy to the airport, and then they were going to fly him out. They weren't going to try to extract using the same method that they used to enter. So the plan was simple but perilous. Some 300, remember that number, 300 heavily armed volunteers would sneak into Venezuela from the northern tip of South America, raid military bases along the way, all this blah, blah, blah stuff. But 300 guys, remember that. That's the first number. Now, here's the second number you're going to have to remember. This was a report from October 2 of 2018. Right about this time, a man named Antonio Ledesma had been being held in Venezuela under house arrest. Attempting to overthrow the government was the charge. He got broken out and went to Puerto Rico, where he met with the Secretary of State and with the governor of Puerto Rico. There, he made a quote that was very cryptic, and it wasn't widely reported. But I want to share that with you. In this article here from El Nuevo Dia, which is the main paper out of Puerto Rico, they have him quoted as saying that the time for talk has passed. It is now time for action, basically paraphrasing. I'll give you this link and you can read it. But one of the quotes that he made after he left the meeting and went out to talk to the reporters was this. And this is important to remember. Quote, "We want to be ready for the day after, so that Venezuela counts on government and an ordered and adequate transition." You see, they were already in the planning stages of action in 2018. Now, here's the quote that you won't find anywhere but here. Ledesma told press in San Juan, quote, that a logistical operation will be launched from this Antillean island, meaning, speaking of, Puerto Rico. He stated it in the factual, that it will happen, will be launched. Now that's important to remember. Puerto Rico to Caracas. Here's Puerto Rico. Here's Caracas. I'm just going to measure this real quick in nautical miles for you. 456 nautical miles. That's another important number. So we have two important numbers now. We have 300 guys, and we have 456 nautical miles. All right. That having been established, our next stop is here. A long time ago, almost 10 years ago, the U.S. government contracted Carver Yachts to create this vessel. It was a concept vessel. It was meant to insert special operations forces into shallow water quickly, but do so in a way that they maintained a level of connectivity, meaning the mission could literally be controlled from someplace else. They had all these different things where you could launch drones, and they had a C-2 built literally into the boat. It was very, very advanced. It was something almost out of science fiction. Now, the Drive reported on this in 2016, but the videos talking about this go back to 2010. Now, we're going to watch two different videos here. They're both about 7 minutes. One is going to show an artist's conception of it and what its mission would be. And then we're going to hear the guy who created it, the guy who was charged with creating it. He's going to slip up. He's going to say something he shouldn't have said. And it's going to tie this particular ship, this particular event, to the current one that just happened. So without any further delay, here we go. M80 Stiletto.
There's an exciting new high-speed surface craft about to commence operational experimentation testing with Navy Expeditionary and Special Forces, one that promises to transform the way U.S. forces conduct close-in coastal and riverine operations. Called Stiletto, it is an Office of Force Transformation initiative jointly sponsored by the OFT and the Special Operations Command. With a top speed of 50 knots, an operational range of over 500 nautical miles, and a fully loaded draft of only 2.5 feet, the 88-foot long and 40-foot wide Stiletto can serve from the coastline to the high seas.
Established. What was the operational range? 500 nautical miles. How far is it from Puerto Rico to Caracas? 450.
Stiletto's revolutionary M-shaped hull channels water underneath the craft, providing lift and reducing drag, shock, and weight. The hull is constructed of a strong, lightweight carbon fiber composite. Most important is the craft's significant ability to network internally and externally. Stiletto's electronic keel, UHF SATCOM, and gigabit land communications enable thoroughly networked operations, while its 2,000 square foot reconfigurable payload cargo areas readily adapt to diverse DoD and interagency missions.
Pay attention to that. The payload area can be readapted for different things other than what they're showing.
The full capabilities of this new platform still need to be tested and experimented with. In the meantime, the following animation gives some sense of the potential uses of such a craft in a number of challenging operational scenarios. Seaborne SOF insertion. Our first operational scenario involves a classic covert SOF insertion. For this mission, Stiletto's loadout can be tailored to include one 11-meter rigid hull inflatable boat, or RIB, to support a 12-man SEAL team and 4 Silver Fox unmanned aerial vehicles. Before Stiletto, surface SEAL team insertions were made by closing with a large amphibious mothership to within 35 miles or so of the target, and then having the team pound into the beach in the 11-meter RIB. Using Stiletto, the large, high-value mothership can remain hundreds of miles offshore, while Stiletto securely and covertly transports the SEAL team and their 11-meter RIB at high speed without subjecting the team to the pounding of a long transit in the RIB. While en route, Stiletto can launch UAVs to fly ahead and scout a target area. As they proceed in towards their objective, the SOF team can use port and starboard mission planning areas aboard Stiletto to review maps and do real-time UAV intelligence. Under cover of darkness, Stiletto can deliver the team to within a few miles of the target, be it a coastal missile battery, WMD storage facility, or hostage rescue site. As a mission progresses, Stiletto can serve as a C2 center, coordinating team communications and intelligence from the UAVs and other sensors. Once the mission is complete, Stiletto can retrieve the team and the rib. A helicopter can extract rescued hostages as Stiletto returns to its amphibious mothership over the horizon.
Just wanted to stop there. What are we looking at? We're looking at a marine environment next to a coast that has a large mountain range. Real quick, let's take a peek at the coast of Venezuela, near Caracas. Here's Caracas. Here's a giant mountain range. Here's the Caribbean Sea. Coastal missile battery. I wonder how many enemies we have that all this matches up. But let's continue because there's more.
Our next operational scenario examines a complex coastal and riverine command and control mission. For this mission, Stiletto's loadout can be tailored to include 2 3-meter unmanned surface vehicles stored in the central part of the cargo bay in lieu of the 11-meter rib, and 4 unmanned aerial vehicles for broad area surveillance. For the extended mission, Stiletto is also reconfigured with extra planning space, crew sleeping quarters, and mess areas. With its unmanned aerial vehicles, and from a distance offshore, Stiletto can monitor the entire operational area. As a C2 command center for half a dozen 11-meter patrol boats, Stiletto can maintain broad area surveillance of the harbors, oil refineries, offshore oil rigs, and commercial waterways to be protected.
I wonder where that would be. Let's see, offshore oil rigs. Man, that sure looks like Venezuela.
When close-in surface coverage is required, the unmanned surface vehicles can be launched from Stiletto. While patrolling upriver, the USV detects a concealed ambush that had been overlooked by the broad area coverage of the UAV. Patrol boats deploy to neutralize the ambush and clear the river.
Palm trees, riverine environment. Let me show you something else about Venezuela. That's talking about right here. You could have literally shot that in real life without having to use CGI, without any of that being necessary. You could have shot that entire thing right here going into Lake Maracaibo. But let's continue the last one. This last scenario, wait till you see this, guys. It's unbelievable. It's like they pulled it right off the headlines from 2020. And like I said, this is a 2010 video. One second.
Maritime Interdiction Operations. Among its many potential interagency missions, Stiletto is well adapted to supporting U.S. Coast Guard open ocean maritime interdiction operations, locating and inspecting merchant ships of interest en route to U.S. ports. For this mission, Stiletto's loadout would include a bow-mounted 20mm gun and a 12-man U.S. Coast Guard detachment. The electronic keel would be loaded with databases of suspect personnel and ships of interest from the National Maritime Intelligence Center, or NMIC, in Suitland, Maryland, and the latest Lloyd's data on ship schedules and cargoes. The cargo bay would hold an 11-meter rig for boarding parties and 4 UAVs. Stiletto would initially be guided to ships of interest by Coast Guard location estimates based on filed departure and arrival reports. Stiletto's UAVs could then be used to identify specific ships using photos and other data from the NMIC databases. UHF SATCOM links enable real-time updates from the Coast Guard and the NMIC.
Coast Guard Region 4, this is Patrol Vessel Stiletto. We have located contact of interest number Alpha Bravo and are closing for inspection. Motor Vessel 1 of interest, this is Patrol Vessel Stiletto. Request to E2 for boarding and inspection by the U.S. Coast Guard.
bow, watched over by the UAV and Stiletto. The boarding party also checks cargo containers for radiation and broken seals.
Okay, now, who saw this in the news? 5 Iranian tankers sailing to Venezuela amid U.S. pressure tactics. I wonder if somebody had thought about, well, if we do this, I wonder how Venezuela's going to react or who they might ally with. This is exactly what they would do to stop these tankers, because you can't just park a destroyer in front of a cargo ship. We learned a couple of years ago what happens when you do that. And you can't just start firing on them and dump tens of millions of gallons of gasoline into the Caribbean Sea either. So this was 10 years ago. Now, here is the video that is the smoking gun. Remember that Stiletto is reconfigurable, that they can do all sorts of stuff back here for whatever mission. This is actually the guys, Knight and Carver, that built this. We're going to jump all the way up to the 5-minute mark here. And let's see if I can find the exact quote and when they said it. All right, here we go. You ready? It'll be about a minute after I start.
There's no boat in the water today that can come close to meeting the operating advantages of the impulse. There's nothing that comes close to performing as we perform with a very simple hull form. And the elegance of this design is in its simplicity.
Okay, now pay attention. I know it's hard to hear. He said the elegance of its design is in its simplicity. And I'm sorry about the horrible music soundtrack. There's just no way around it.
Our next step is to build a modified version of the superstructure change for 149 passengers.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Our next step. Now, this is 3 years later. This is 2013. Our next step is to build a modified superstructure to hold 149 passengers. 149 passengers. Down in the first pinned comment, I'll give you all of these links, and you can listen to this for yourself. It's at the 6.08 mark of a 704 video called M80 Stiletto Navy Stealth Vessel built by Knight and Carver. 149 people. Now, what would you need 149 people for in a special operations vessel? Oh, I don't know. What would happen if you had 2 of them? Well, then you would have 300, wouldn't you? 300 guys in 2 special operations vessels specifically designed for operations in Venezuela. That was 2013. That man said this. Why would DOD need to put 149 people into the back of a special operations vessel if it was not for 2 teams? 2 teams. 300 guys. I don't know how, when you look at what that vessel was designed to do, fast boat in, shallow water, everything they described doing, it is literally exactly what these guys half-assed tried to do with other means. It's identical to the plan. What if there was a second group that was supposed to come out of Puerto Rico that didn't? What if there was a second group of guys that was supposed to come out of Puerto Rico that didn't? Now here's where things get a little bit murky. Puerto Rico doesn't exactly have the most warm and cordial of relations with D.C. after that whole mess with Maria. Right? What a great way to embarrass D.C. What a great way to embarrass D.C. This failure. And D.C. can't call them out, because if D.C. calls them out, D.C. admits involvement. This was very clearly Bay of Pigs 2.0, where somebody decided that they were going to use a different set of rules to operate, a different scheme, a different strategy. There were guys in Colombia. There were guys in Puerto Rico. And they were probably supposed to come in simultaneously from two different directions, one backing up the other. I wonder if the main team out of Puerto Rico was supposed to distract the Venezuelan military, and then when they're distracted dealing with those guys, these guys came in on the other end and came around from behind, or vice versa. Either way, what they're describing was described on YouTube in 2010 and 2013. And like I said, I'll give you the links to all of these articles. You can put everything together for yourself. The distance from Puerto Rico to Caracas, all of the different scenarios of the M80 Stiletto, the weird coincidence that exactly 2 M80 Stilettos equals 300 guys. Sorry, but that's just way too much of a coincidence for me. Way too much. So, anyway, I'll let that just be the end, and you guys can go down, pick up all those links, and follow them, and read for yourself, and make your own judgment calls on this. But the 3 scenarios that they showed for the M80 Stiletto are specific, absolutely directionally specific to Venezuela, oil fields, riverine operations, and coastal missile batteries near, I mean, come on. That literally looked like the coast of Venezuela in every one of those CGI scenarios. So, I guess we will just leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.